Lando Norris dominates the opening day of the Dutch Grand Prix as 3 red flags mark a disruptive return for Formula One from the summer break. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks. And Ian, before we get on to Lando dominating the opening day, we're going to start by talking about what was, in general, such a bizarre return for Formula One from the summer break. I'm going to go through a quick list of everything that happened across
Go
the
for
2
it.
sessions. So we had in FP1 within the first 15 minutes, should worth noting, Lewis Hamilton span, Yuki Tsunoda then spun, Kimi Antonelli then beached himself in the gravel, causing the first red flag of the day. After the checker flag in FP1, Max Verstappen then beached his Red Bull following a practice start and a lockup. Moving into FP2, and Lance Stroll had a pretty big crash at turn 3. His Aston Martin needs massive repairs. Alex Albon then beached his Williams. That created a third red flag. Lance Stroll, of course, the crash. That was the second. Lewis Hamilton also then spun again in FP2. So overall, a pretty busy day. And there was also an incident in the pit lane, which has seen McLaren receive a €5,000 fine for an incident involving Oscar Piastri and George Russell. F1, Ian, is definitely back.
Yeah, and Fernando Norris, quite naturally, it couldn't have gone any smoother. Pretty much continued from where he left off in Hungary, topped both sessions there in Hungary, and he's topped both Friday sessions as well today. Brilliant practice time in FP1, absolutely blitzed the field. The usual caveats apply, of course, on this occasion. Yes, it was only FP1, but nevertheless, that was a significant gap. And of course, for this Dutch Grand Prix this year, we are a step softer in compounds compared to last year's time. But nevertheless, still a superb time from Lando in FP1. Going into FP2, quickest again, but the gap had considerably come down. And surprisingly, it wasn't Oscar Piastri, his teammate, who was closest. It was, in fact, Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso, 0.087 seconds behind Lando. Oscar Piastri, 0.002 of a second behind Fernando. But without a doubt, and given the comments of both Fernando and Lance after today's sessions, they believe that they are firmly in the mix for positions on the front 2 rows of the grid in qualifying on Saturday. Beyond that, of course, as I say, very smooth sailing day for Lando. Beyond that, that list of incidents pretty much sums it up. It's a real narrow, tight, twisty track as Zandvoort. Pretty similar in some respects to the Hungaroring. Aston Martin went well there. That's probably why they're doing quite well here. This kind of circuit kind of lends itself to the AMR 25, as we can kind of deduce. But yes, lots of different incidents across both sessions. No one really having a kind of strong, fluid day, with the exception of Lando Norris.
And of course, in terms of all those incidents that I listed off, the biggest was, of course, the crash at turn 3 for Lance Stroll. Thankfully, he seems to be okay, given that it was similar in a way to what happened to Daniel Ricciardo a couple of years ago. And we know, of course, the injury he got from that missed several races. Lance, absolutely okay, so that's good to hear. And actually, it's a shame for Lance, because actually, Aston Martin, both sides of the garage, looked really strong on the opening day. Lance still actually quite positive about the opening day at Zandvoort, but you've got to worry about the amount of repairs his car is going to need going into Saturday.
Yeah, that's going to be a big overnight job for his side of the garage. I'm sure Fernando's side of the garage will lend a hand as well to get things done as quickly as possible to ensure those guys working on that car can at least have some kind of evening, given, as you say, the extensive damage to that car. The right-hand side, absolutely not so much obliterated, but certainly it was significant heavy damage on that side of the car. So yes, that's going to take a big overnight repair job. What kind of impact will that have on Lance going into third practice in particular, and then obviously the knock-on effect for qualifying? We'll have to wait and see. The main thing is for Lance, of course, and this was the big concern when he had that smash, was, of course, we know he's had these wrist injuries. Obviously broke his wrists in pre-season testing. Where are we? 2023? 4. Here we go again.
One of them.
My memory on these things is terrible. But nevertheless, yes, massive wrist injuries. And of course, then earlier this season, complained about wrist injuries, which forced him out of a Grand Prix earlier this year as well. So, yeah, we saw from the onboard said he'd still got both hands on the steering wheel as he went in heavily into the barrier. And of course, you saw his hands and wrists twist around, and there was kind of concerns, oh, might he have damaged his wrists again? But as I say, for Lance, he seems to come out of it okay. Whether there'll be any residual effects going into tomorrow, because of course the adrenaline will have been flowing, and once that wears off, that's when then you begin to feel things a little bit more differently. So hopefully for him, he will be okay going into Saturday.
And actually, the driver who quite quickly asked on the radio if Lance was okay was Max Verstappen, immediately concerned
Yeah,
actually about
because he was the
Lance's
first on
wrists.
the scene. Yeah.
Absolutely. For Max, though, and for Red Bull in general, running a new front wing at Zandvoort, and it's got to be said, yes, okay, the weird moment with the lockup at turn 1, following the practice start after FP1, a pretty harmless beaching in turn 1. The car was absolutely fine, but ultimately, looks like it's going to be another difficult weekend, and unless something crazy happens, I don't think the Dutch national anthem will be playing out on the podium come Sunday.
Yeah, 5th quickest at the end of FP2, so recovered
Almost 6/10 off, though. Long way.
6/10 off. Yeah, exactly. It is a big gap. So recovered to a certain extent, bearing in mind that he was a little off the pace in FP1, probably even more so than in FP2. But you can never rule him out. But it's one of those where
Yeah.
Max, in fairness, is kind of like played things down himself, not only coming into the Friday session, but after the Friday session as well. He knows there's work to do. The car not quite where he would like it. So yes, we've seen the grandstands as well, bizarrely, not as full as they would ordinarily be, as we've seen these past few years when Max has been flying, when he's been dominating F1, when he's been getting these victories in front of his home crowd. Quite a surprise to see quite a few empty sections within the grandstands around Zandvoort. So the fact that Max isn't in this title fight this year, we can quite clearly see it's had a little bit of a knock-on effect for that Dutch Grand Prix crowd. And as you rightly point out, Nick, I don't think we're going to be hearing the Dutch national anthem on Sunday, barring some considerable freak of nature. We are expecting still a weather front to come across and play its part across the weekend. But as we saw today, we were monitoring
Where
it.
was it?
Where was it? The prediction for FP2 was 100% rain pretty much.
Yeah.
But we saw on the radar, as the session unfolded, that rain cell just slowly head up the coast, and then almost like at the last minute kind of thing, just drift away from the circuit, and it never hit. It just goes to show how unpredictable the weather can be within these coastal kind of regions, as Zandvoort is. The beach just literally a stone's throw away from the circuit. So yes, we will wait and see. We don't know what's quite going to happen. I'm not going to take a punt on that weather forecast, but if Max is going to be standing on top of that podium, it does look like it's going to take an awful lot of rain to help him out.
Just to quickly go through the top 10 from FP2, it was Lando Norris on top on a 1 minute 9.890. Fernando Alonso in second, the only other driver to go into the 1 minute 9s, is worth pointing out. Oscar Piastri in third, just 0.089 seconds adrift, before George Russell in fourth was almost 4 tenths adrift, a big jump, which is why I've listed this out, because Max Verstappen in fifth was almost 6 tenths adrift, Lewis Hamilton in sixth, Yuki Tsunoda seventh, Charles Leclerc eighth, Franco Colapinto in a pretty good P9, and Nico Hulkenberg in P10. We've got to discuss Lewis a little bit because there was a lot of question marks about him, of course, going into this weekend, given what happened in Hungary, and particularly as well his quotes from Thursday on Media Day. We obviously spoken already that he had a spin in FP1, a spin in FP2 on a set of new soft tyres, so that would have been his best lap time. And it's got to be said, given that his best lap time of the day was still better than Charles Leclerc's, okay, yes, 8 tenths adrift, but it does seem that there might be something for Lewis this weekend. A podium, perhaps, who knows, but he is looking a bit better.
Nah, it certainly wasn't looking that way in FP1, was it? Because they really struggled. The Ferraris down in 14th and 15th. Lewis Charles just 9 thousandths of a second ahead of Lewis, if I remember correctly. Yes, there was a recovery in FP2, but as you say, there was a couple of big spins for Lewis. One when he appeared to be on a really good flying lap in FP2, set the purple sector, and then just lost it out of turn 9 and spun at 360 degrees. That followed his spin in FP1 where he flat spotted all 4 of those mediums. Still managed to go on and set a reasonable lap in FP2, despite that spin and on those soft tyres, he didn't come in for a new set, stayed out on those, and at least managed to do a little bit of a recovery. But at the moment, I just think the Ferraris, it's just too big of a gap for them. I cannot see them challenging for the top two rows at the best. And if they're on the third row, that would be quite a surprise.
Right, let's finish off on Franco Colapinto. As I mentioned, was in a pretty impressive P9. However, it's worth pointing out that his P9 came after the team principal's press conference, which included a certain Flavio Briatore, of course, the Alpine executive advisor, who's effectively standing in a way as a team principal, making some big decisions. Yeah. And it appears that one of those decisions, which maybe he's regretting, is putting Franco in the car. It's safe to say it doesn't sound like we'll be seeing Franco racing for Alpine next season.
Unless Franco manages to pull out all the stops over these next 10 Grand Prix. At least FP2 was a small step in the right direction for him. As he pointed out, Franco, post-session, that was probably one of the better Fridays that he's had this season. But as you say, those comments coming on the back of Flavio's remarks that came in the team principal's press conference. And for those of you that don't know, the team principal's press conference on a Friday sits in between FP1 and FP2. Now, Flavio's remarks, as you pointed out, Nick, were very pointed. He effectively suggested that he potentially put him in the car too soon, that it was a year, more than likely, ahead of schedule, that Franco should really be in F1, that maybe another year somewhere else might have done it, might have put him in good stead, that the cars are a bit too heavy for these younger guys, that maybe not quite got used to it, a bit too quick for these younger guys. Bottom line is, when he was asked quite pointedly about his future, he does not know at this stage what that holds for Franco Colapinto. What he knows is that he has a very good first driver in Pierre Gasly. He's basically said that Pierre Gasly is the benchmark, the base for the team, and what the team really needs is a good second driver that can really help Pierre push that car forward, especially going forward into 2026, of course, when it's really going to need as much experience as it can possibly muster to help drive that car forward under the new regulation set. So yes, big cloud hanging over Franco Colapinto's future right now. As I say, one small step in the right direction with that 9th place in FP2, but it's going to be made much bigger steps in qualifying and Grand Prix for the remaining 10 races, that's for sure, if he is to be on the grid in 2026.
Yeah, and for those watching, let us know in the comments if you think Franco is doing enough to keep that second seat at Alpine, or whether he does deserve the boot, maybe this year or actually next year, and who you think should replace him, because I think that's the biggest talking point at the moment, who could partner Pierre Gasly next season. For those watching this video, please do smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Ian, amazing stuff as always. We will join you again after qualifying on Saturday. See you later.
As always, thanks for listening and watching. Take care, folks.